Black CEO denied first class. One call. Later, the airline is gone. The early morning chill wrapped itself around Washington Dulles International Airport like a quiet warning. A drizzle misted the pavement outside, dulling the shine of black sedans and expensive shoes rushing toward the terminal. At curbside drop-off, a matte black Genesis G90 came to a slow, precise stop. The rear door opened, and Elijah Carter stepped out. 6'2", lean but powerfully built, his presence was both elegant and restrained. Dressed in a dark charcoal suit stitched by hand in Milan and a wool coat tailored to perfection, Elijah looked like the kind of man who belonged anywhere. But he knew better. The world didn't see suits and craftsmanship when it looked at a black man like him. It saw suspicion. It saw disruption. It saw something to question. Elijah adjusted his cufflinks, engraved platinum, a gift to himself when he landed his first Department of Defense contract through Obsidian Systems, the AI firm he had built in total secrecy over 12 years. A firm that now powered intelligence operations across half of NATO and quietly held patents so advanced they were classified. No one at the airport knew who he was, and that was by design. "Sir," said his driver, a quiet man named Mason, stepping out to assist. "Would you like help with your luggage?" Elijah shook his head gently. "Just the carry-on today." Mason nodded, stepped back into the car, and disappeared into traffic. Elijah walked into the terminal with his leather briefcase and a hard-shell carry-on rolling behind him. At the TSA checkpoint, heads turned, but not because anyone recognized him. It was the way he moved. Calm. Centered. Intentional. That kind of composure didn't belong to just anyone. "Morning, sir," a TSA officer offered, scanning his ID. Elijah gave a respectful nod, offered nothing more. Once cleared, he followed the sign to the Regalis Airways first-class check-in, stopping at the premium counter where two agents stood behind their glowing screens. One of them, a woman with silver blonde hair tucked into a too-tight bun, glanced up. Her nameplate read P. Dinsmore. Her eyes lingered. "Just a beat too long." Elijah spoke first. "Good morning." Elijah Carter, Regalis Airways, Flight 227 to San Francisco, first class. He passed over his boarding pass and ID, adding his jet black Centurion card as backup, though he rarely had to. Paula Dinsmore took the items without a smile. She typed with stiff fingers and narrowed eyes. "Business or pleasure?" she asked, voice thin. "Business." A flicker passed across her face. She glanced at his ID again, then at him, her lips pressed together. "I'm going to need to verify some things," she said, and disappeared behind the counter without another word. Elijah stood there in silence. He noticed a white man in a Patagonia vest and loafers walk up beside him and hand over his boarding pass. The other agent smiled brightly and handed it back within seconds. Elijah said nothing. Paula returned with a forced expression. "There appears to be a discrepancy. I'll need to revalidate your lounge access. Could you step aside, sir?" "No discrepancy," Elijah said calmly. "That pass was issued by your system 10 minutes ago." "I'm asking you to step aside," she repeated, louder now. Eyes turned toward them. A couple glanced away awkwardly. A man in a suit sneered. Elijah's fingers twitched but remained still at his sides. "I'd prefer not to be publicly interrogated over a valid ticket," Elijah said evenly. "If your documents are real," she said with a fake smile, "you'll be back in the lounge in no time." Behind the counter, a young intern in a Regalis uniform was watching the scene with growing unease. His name tag read, Marcus. He squinted at Elijah, lips parting slightly. Then he pulled out his phone, swiped quickly, and froze. The face in the headline matched the man now being pulled aside like a criminal. No one else seemed to notice, or they pretended not to. Security arrived a minute later. A tall officer with a military haircut and a face like granite. He didn't introduce himself. "We're going to need you to come with us, sir." "For what?" Elijah asked. "Verifying your identity. It'll only take a moment." "You're making a mistake," Marcus whispered under his breath. Elijah heard him. He gave a single nod in Marcus's direction before turning to the guard. "I'll cooperate." They walked through the terminal in silence. Behind them, Paula Dinsmore muttered something into her walkie-talkie, a smug smile playing on her lips. Inside the quiet security office, Elijah sat down at the stainless steel table. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly. "I'm going to need to see that ID again," the guard said. His name was Grant. He didn't look hostile, but he didn't look comfortable either. Elijah handed it over, his face unreadable. "Mr. Carter," Grant said after a long pause. "I'm not seeing anything unusual in the system. Your ticket is valid. The card checks out. Your name is on the manifest in first class." "I know," Elijah replied, his tone clipped but controlled. "There may have been a misunderstanding," Grant offered. "This isn't a misunderstanding," Elijah said quietly. "It's a pattern." Grant didn't argue. Elijah reached into his coat, pulled out a sleek black phone, encrypted and custom-built. He placed a single call. "Obsidian Command," a voice answered immediately. "Activate Raven," Elijah said. "Confirm parameters?" "Observation mode." "Full perimeter. Data capture. Monitor Regalis Airways personnel from timestamp -30. Push data to Tier 1 stream. Redundant cloud sync enabled." "Copy that. Raven is live." He ended the call, slid the phone back into his pocket. Grant raised an eyebrow. "You're military?" "No," Elijah said. "I'm worse. I'm private sector." There was a knock on the office door. Marcus. "Sir," the intern said breathlessly, addressing Grant. "That man, the one you have in here, do you know who he is?" Grant looked confused. "We verified his ID." "No," Marcus said. "He's Elijah Carter, CEO of Obsidian Systems, the guy who built the Intel AI they use at NORAD. He owns a controlling stake in 3 defense companies and 2 of the top cybersecurity firms in the country." Grant froze. "I did a project on his algorithms in grad school," Marcus continued, almost in awe. He's a ghost. Most people in tech circles thought he didn't even exist." Elijah stood up slowly. "Now that we've cleared up my identity," he said, "I'd like to go board my flight." Grant nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir. I'll escort you personally." As they exited the office, Elijah's phone buzzed once. A message from his operations chief, Nia Brooks, had arrived. "Raven activated. Real-time data coming in. We've already found anomalies. Regalis has ties to 2 offshore shell entities in Zurich, and Paula Dinsmore has 5 previous complaints, 3 related to racially biased conduct." "Want us to proceed?" Elijah typed one word. "Proceed." As he walked back toward the terminal, head held high, not a wrinkle in his suit, he passed Paula Dinsmore, who didn't meet his eyes this time. Elijah smiled faintly. Not because she had looked away, but because she, and the empire behind her, had no idea what was coming. Not yet. But they would. Long before Elijah Carter made that call at Dulles Airport, long before Regalis Airways found itself standing on the edge of a cliff it hadn't seen coming, there was a child who sat on a cracked concrete step outside a group home in Southside Chicago, sketching equations in a spiral notebook that had been recycled twice and still carried the name of a girl who aged out before she turned 16. That boy was Elijah. 8 years old, parentless. Aunt vanished. System indifferent. Miss Tilda, the only social worker who didn't treat him like a case number, sat beside him on that step with a sigh. "She's not coming again, is she?" he said, eyes fixed on the page. Miss Tilda hesitated. "Not today, no." Elijah nodded once. His hand didn't stop moving. "It's all right. I already figured that out." "What are you working on?" she asked gently. "A pattern." "How to tell when someone's lying?" She raised an eyebrow. "Using math?" "No, using time." Repetition, reaction delays. People always repeat the lie the same way. It's when they hesitate you know they're adjusting. Miss Tilda didn't say anything for a long moment. "You're something else, Elijah Carter." He didn't look up. "No. I'm just getting ready." "For what?" "For the day they stop lying." By 13, he'd hacked into the cafeteria's point-of-sale system to redistribute meal credits so no kid went hungry while others wasted leftovers. He never got caught, not because he was careful, but because the system was too lazy to notice. By 16, he'd submitted his first solo research paper to a European AI conference under a pseudonym. It was accepted. A recruiter at MIT sent a note asking to speak with Dr. Adrian Cole. When Elijah showed up on a borrowed blazer and told them he was still in high school, the woman conducting the interview blinked 3 times before whispering, "Jesus." He got the scholarship, not because he needed charity, but because MIT needed him more than he needed them. But the real education began when he tried to change the world. At 19, his capstone project, an early predictive AI system designed to detect crop failure and famine through satellite data, was brought before the World Food Program. They showed interest, but the venture capitalists showed more. They said they loved his mission, called him a visionary, bought him steak dinners he didn't know how to eat. Then they offered him $50,000 for the IP, not equity, not partnership. Just ownership. "That's a humanitarian tool," Elijah told them, sliding the term sheet back across the table. "It's not for hedge funds." One of the VCs laughed. "Son, everything's for hedge funds." Elijah walked out. 6 months later, a hedge fund launched a system that looked eerily similar to his. They called it AgriSense. They sold it to trading firms for predictive investment into drought-prone areas. Farmers starved, profits soared. Elijah wasn't credited once. He learned 2 things that year. First, justice did not happen on its own. Second, power wasn't evil. Power was necessary. So he vanished. From age 20 onward, Elijah built Obsidian systems without press, without fanfare. No LinkedIn, no photo on Crunchbase. The company operated through shell fronts, government contracts, classified bidding rounds, and silent partnerships. Its specialty, data architecture, real-time intelligence, and defensive AI frameworks. If a federal building had smart sensors, Obsidian probably wrote the firmware. If an embassy prevented a cyber attack, Obsidian's code likely ran underneath. His name appeared nowhere. But the initials EC were in every secure build as a digital watermark, traceable only to those with keys no one else even knew existed. By 35, Elijah Carter had outgrown the system that tried to bury him. And so, he designed one of his own. But anonymity wasn't always a shield. Sometimes it was armor, sometimes it was a weapon, and sometimes, like now, it was a trap waiting to be triggered. Back in present time, Regalis Airways had no idea what it had just walked into. While Elijah's plane cut across the sky to San Francisco, a small, windowless office in Arlington, Virginia, came alive. 6 agents inside worked for a private firm called Slate Watch, an Obsidian offshoot created for one purpose: pattern tracking. On screen, a digital heat map of Regalis Airways glowed red in key locations: HR nodes, finance pipelines, access logs. Keywords like escalation, internal risk, and incident resolution blinked. Nia Brooks, head of global security for Obsidian and Elijah's most trusted operative, sat in the center. "Packet trace from Dulles is complete," her tech officer reported. "Audio flagged. Dinsmore has used racially coded language 6 times in the last quarter alone. Surveillance matches tone analysis. Pattern is consistent." Nia nodded. "HR file?" "Sanitized. But 2 closed-door settlements. Passenger complaints sealed with NDAs. Back channel? Already reached out to a gate agent who flagged inconsistencies. She's ready to talk if protected." "Protect her." At the far end of the room, another screen lit up. A server diagram showed access points into Regalis's infrastructure. Red X's marked system vulnerabilities. Obsidian code buried inside their logistics. "Still active." "Activate beacon protocol," Nia ordered. "Confirm?" "Confirm." A low hum vibrated through the air. Back in San Francisco, Elijah stepped out of the terminal and into a waiting vehicle. The driver didn't speak. He didn't need to. Elijah opened the back compartment and pulled out a second phone, used only in operations requiring strategic consequence. He called Nia directly. "Status. We're in. Assets? Monitoring. Early findings suggest Regalis is using Shell subsidiaries for offshore transfers. One links to an entity investigated for procurement fraud in Europe. Leak nothing yet. Watch. Log everything. We move when they blink. You think they'll blink? They always do." He hung up. The city lights began to flicker on as the car weaved through rush-hour traffic. Elijah rolled down the window slightly. The air smelled like rain and exhaust and possibility. Somewhere across town, a junior analyst at Regalis IT was noticing system latency in their high-value booking algorithms. She flagged it. Someone higher up dismissed it. "We'll patch it tomorrow." But by tomorrow, Regalis wouldn't be able to patch what was coming, because Elijah Carter wasn't here for compensation. He wasn't here for an apology. He was here for a reckoning, and this time, it wasn't going to be private. It was going to be permanent. The video dropped at 6:07 a.m. East Coast time. It wasn't an official release. No press release, no corporate statement, no hashtags. Just shaky, grainy cell phone footage posted by an anonymous airport staffer who had seen the exchange at the Dulles lounge. It caught everything. Paula Dinsmore leaning in, voice condescending. The way Elijah stood silent, patient, but deeply unreadable. It ended with him being led away by security. In less than 30 minutes, the clip had 70,000 views. By noon, it had crossed 3 million. No caption, just a title. "This is what happens when you fly first class while black." By 10 a.m., Regalis Airways was trending on Twitter next to racial profiling and Elijah Carter. The name surprised people. Some didn't believe it at first. "Elijah Carter? The defense tech guy. No way that's him." But then the speculation turned. Journalists began connecting dots. Obsidian Systems' founder had never appeared publicly. No interviews, no conferences, no red carpets. But tech insiders, especially in government corridors, knew the legend. The man who had outcoded entire defense contractors and whose AI saved 2 major cities from cyber-terrorist blackouts. Marcus, the intern who had witnessed the scene, finally broke his silence. In a since-deleted thread, he confirmed the man's identity. "I saw what happened," he wrote. "And yes, it was him. They treated him like he didn't belong. Because they didn't know who he was. But now they will." And the internet lit up. Nia Brooks watched the numbers spike from her command center in Arlington. It was like watching a virus replicate across an organism. Predictable, controlled, but building speed. "Are we ready for Phase 2? She asked, not looking up. "Yes, ma'am," her comms officer replied. "Surveillance nodes are synced. Financial and comms data from Regalis are duplicating to our secure storage. We've indexed all employee keywords from the last 90 days. Legal? Everything is scraped from public or operationally accessed systems. No illegal intrusion." "Good," Nia said. "Release the HR leak." "Slow drip. Prioritize complaints marked internal only. Make sure Dinsmore's name is in the first batch." At that same moment, Paula Dinsmore was standing in the break room at Regalis Terminal Operations in Dulles, face buried in her phone. Her co-worker Lisa rushed in, eyes wide. "Paula," she said, "have you seen what's online?" Paula looked up. "What?" "You're in it." "In what?" Lisa handed her the phone. Paula watched, face tightening. "Who posted this?" she whispered. "I don't know, but it's blowing up." Paula's fingers shook as she refreshed her mentions. There were hundreds. Thousands. Comments flooded in. "You racist witch. How many times have you done this?" She thought she could decide who gets to belong. She dropped the phone. "This wasn't my fault," Paula muttered. "He looked suspicious." Lisa stared at her. "He looked calm." "You escalated, and you didn't even know who he was." "I was doing my job." "No," Lisa said softly. "You were playing gatekeeper." At Regalis headquarters in Dallas, CEO Gregory Stanton was on his third espresso by 9:30 a.m. He was watching CNN, eyes fixed on the live broadcast. An incident involving Obsidian Systems founder Elijah Carter at Washington Dulles Airport has sparked national outrage. Carter, one of the most elusive figures in the defense and AI industries, was allegedly profiled and detained while attempting to enter Regalis Airways' first-class lounge. Gregory slammed the remote down on the glass table. "This is bad," said Martin Glass, his CFO. "Really bad." "How the hell was he even on our flight?" Gregory growled. "We do VIP tracking." "Why wasn't he flagged?" "He uses shell accounts, private bookings, might have even bought the ticket through a dummy corp." "We couldn't have known." "Well, now we know," Gregory snapped, "and he's about to torch this company." Ethan Vaughn, head of crisis management, strolled into the room like he owned it. Slim suit, cold eyes, reputation built on silencing scandals before they caught fire. "I've seen worse," he said, sitting casually. "This is manageable." "It better be," Gregory muttered, "because we're down 7 points since market open." "First things first," Ethan said. "We issue a standard statement. Diversity, inclusion, isolated incident. Blame the employee, not the system." Gregory rubbed his temple. "Will that be enough?" "It's never enough," Ethan said, "but it buys us time." Meanwhile, at Obsidian's San Francisco offices, Elijah sat in a private suite, watching the news with stoic detachment. "CNN just aired your name," Nia's voice came through his earpiece. "Everyone's waking up now." "I know. You ready to step out from behind the curtain?" Elijah didn't answer right away. He watched the anchor read off his bio like it was some kind of myth. MIT, Obsidian. Quiet billionaire. Black tech ghost. He turned toward the window, where the city buzzed below. "People like Dinsmore aren't the problem," he finally said. Nia paused. "Say again?" "She's a symptom." The system trained her to think she had the right to decide who gets to belong. I'm not interested in taking her down. So what are you interested in? He turned back, eyes sharp. I'm interested in taking down the system that made her feel justified. Then say the word. The system's already crumbling. Elijah closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them again. Let it. Outside the window, the fog began to lift. Not just from the sky, but from everything, and Regalis had no idea how blind it had been walking into this war. But that would change. Very soon. Inside Regalis Airways corporate headquarters in Dallas, the air had turned thick with tension and thin on solutions. The mahogany-paneled executive boardroom felt more like a bunker now, stifling, sterile, a pressure cooker of denials and desperation. Gregory Stanton paced in tight circles, his tie already loosened, his forehead slick. "How the hell is this still trending?" he barked. Across the table, CFO Martin Glass shrugged helplessly. "The social sentiment dashboard's been read all morning. Hashtags are multiplying. It's gone global." Even the BBC picked it up. And now tech media's chiming in, digging into Elijah Carter's past, his work, his silence. They're painting him as a mystery billionaire who finally snapped. Gregory slammed a hand down. He didn't snap. He got offended. Ethan Vaughn leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, composed as always. He didn't get offended, Greg. He got strategic. There's a difference. Gregory glared at him. "Well, since you're the expert, tell me how we fix this." "You don't fix a forest fire with a garden hose," Ethan said flatly. "You let it burn what it wants. Then you isolate what's left and rebuild." "You're saying we throw people to the fire?" "I'm saying we pick a scapegoat," Ethan replied. "And fast. Someone at a high enough level to show accountability, but not high enough to cost us the board." "Security?" Martin looked up. "Walter Briggs?" Ethan nodded slowly. "He's clean." "That's what makes him perfect. No dirt to bring up in retaliation. Frame it as a security protocol failure. Say he overreacted. We announce a review of training procedures and diversity policies." Gregory hesitated. "Won't the union push back?" Ethan smiled. "Let them. We'll call it a reassignment pending investigation. He won't even know he's being sacrificed until it's too late." In another part of the building, Paula Dinsmore sat hunched over her desk in HR, staring blankly at her inbox. It was flooded, not with support, but with rage. Messages from strangers, former passengers, even some ex-co-workers. She had stopped opening them after the fifth one said, "I hope you lose everything." Erin Walsh, an HR officer in her early 30s, with a reputation for keeping her head down, walked into Paula's cubicle with a clipboard. "They want to see you upstairs," Erin said carefully. "Who does?" "Legal, communications." "Probably PR." Paula's voice cracked. "Am I being fired?" Erin hesitated. "They haven't said that." "But you're in the center of it, Paula." "I followed protocol," Paula muttered. "He didn't look like a first-class passenger. He had no assistant. No entourage, no obvious credentials." Erin stared at her. "You don't need credentials to deserve dignity." "You're not black," Paula snapped. "No," Erin said, "but I'm not blind either." Across the country, in a secure facility outside San Francisco, Nia Brooks was reading through decrypted email chains from Regalis's internal servers. Her team had been quietly indexing conversations from the executive tier, correlating keywords, mapping patterns. Got something, her lead analyst called out. Stanton had a side channel, an unofficial comms loop routed through a shell domain. Looks like he's been offloading funds to Zurich through a charter subsidiary. Nia raised an eyebrow. Can we trace the accounts? We already did. Shell companies. Cayman Islands, all tied to a dormant logistics wing registered under Regalis International Cargo. The twist. That wing was shut down on paper 5 years ago. Nia sat back, folded her arms. So the airline isn't just shady on the customer front. It's financially dirty, too. Like SEC-level dirty. Push that to Elijah. Flag it Tier 1. Elijah Carter received the alert at precisely 11:12 a.m. while walking into a private conference at the Carter Foundation's West Coast office. He paused at the door, scanned the summary, and nodded once. He was joined moments later by a woman with cropped gray hair and a steel gaze, Evelyn Cross, his former mentor, and one of the first black women to run a Fortune 100 company. They're bleeding, Elijah said without looking up. Evelyn sat. Not enough yet. They're turning on each other. Good. That's where rot begins to surface. He turned toward her. I never wanted it to go this far. No, she said, meeting his eyes. But you planned for it. Back in Dallas, Walter Briggs had just been called into a closed-door meeting. He could tell something was off. There was too much formality in the way they shook his hand. Too much apology in their tone. Walter, said Ethan Vaughn, after a thorough internal review, the company has decided to place you on administrative leave pending investigation into your handling of a recent passenger escalation. Briggs froze. You're blaming me? He asked, voice low. We're not blaming anyone, Ethan said smoothly. This is procedural, optics matter. You told me to remove him. I followed escalation protocol exactly. There was no aggression, no resistance, no threat. We understand, but public perception. Briggs stood. Save it. You're not looking for truth. You're looking for a target. You'll receive full pay while on leave, Ethan added, unfazed. Briggs stared for a moment, then chuckled bitterly. You picked the wrong man. As he walked out, he passed a screen in the hallway playing live news. Elijah Carter's face was there now, not just in shadows. Clean-cut, calm, speaking in a carefully controlled interview on MSNBC. I'm not interested in canceling anyone, he was saying. I'm interested in accountability. In truth, in building systems that don't punish people for existing in the wrong skin. The anchor leaned in. And what would you say to the airline now, Mr. Carter? Elijah smiled faintly. I'd say this isn't about flying first class. It's about who gets to walk through the front door without suspicion. And why so many of us still don't. Paula Dinsmore, watching the same feed from her hotel room later that night, reached for her wine glass with a shaking hand. She didn't recognize the man from the lounge. Not really. She thought she'd been dealing with another entitled passenger. Instead, she'd lit a match in the middle of a drought, and the wind was just starting to blow. It was almost poetic how Elijah Carter's silence created more noise than the Regalis boardroom had ever known. His face wasn't plastered across magazines. He hadn't stood behind microphones screaming for justice. He hadn't tweeted a single word. But now that his name was public, every whisper of power recoiled, because those who knew what Obsidian Systems really was understood that Elijah was more than a CEO. He was an architect of systems that could dismantle institutions without firing a single shot. And right now, that architecture was turning itself against Regalis from within. At 8:23 a.m. on a Tuesday, the Regalis Airways booking system crashed on its busiest route, New York to Los Angeles. At 9:07, credit card payments started duplicating on international transactions. At 10:11, a premium client seat upgrade software randomly downgraded passengers, causing a confrontation at LAX that made local news. Gregory Stanton stood in the Situation Room on the 27th floor of Regalis HQ, surrounded by engineers frantically troubleshooting systems they didn't even fully understand. "How is this possible?" he snapped. "We've got triple redundant failovers, encrypted protocols, 2 years of incident-free runs. This is not some random bug." One of the lead engineers, a young woman named Tina, spoke without turning from her terminal. "It's not random, sir. It's surgical." "What the hell does that mean?" "It means someone knows exactly where to poke us to make the entire system limp." Across the room, Ethan Vaughn stood with a tight jaw, scanning incoming alerts. "They're not hacking us," he muttered. "They're waking something up." Martin Glass leaned over. "You think it's Carter?" "It's Obsidian," Ethan said. "He built the original infrastructure for our global rescheduling matrix 3 years ago. We bought it through a vendor shell. We thought we were clever. Turns out we were a line item in his long game." Gregory paled. "You're telling me this man has a backdoor into our operational core?" "No," Ethan said. "I'm telling you he has the map, the key, and the locks were built with his screws. We just didn't know we handed it to him." Back in San Francisco, Elijah sat in a glass conference room in the upper floors of Obsidian's Pacific Tower. On the digital board behind him, nodes blinked red, orange, then flickered back to green. Nia stood nearby, watching the algorithm churn in real time. "We've traced Stanton's communications," she said. "He's starting to panic. They're trying to contain the system errors by isolating team access. But the problem is they can't identify what's causing the bleed." "They won't," Elijah said. "Because there's no virus, no leak. It's just inefficient design, finally exposed." He turned to a different screen and pulled up a file marked Regalis Legal Internal. Pages of settlement documents appeared, cases of discrimination, harassment, safety violations buried under corporate jargon, and non-disclosure agreements. "How many?" 42 settled in the last 6 years. 27 involved employees of color. 7 were classified as internal miscommunication, but the wording screams retaliation. Elijah nodded slowly. "Release the first wave. Public servers. Use secure news channels." "We don't go anonymous. Attribution goes to me." "You sure?" Nia asked. "Once we attach your name to the data, it becomes personal." "They'll strike back." "They already are." 10 minutes later, the first data leak hit the inboxes of top investigative journalists across the country. Within an hour, MSNBC aired a breaking report with supporting documents. A former Regalis employee, a black pilot named Deshaun Moore, spoke publicly for the first time. "They grounded me after I reported a flight supervisor for racial slurs," he said, voice steady. "Then they rewrote my schedule to minimize my flight hours. When I filed an internal complaint, HR lost it." He looked into the camera. "Now I know why. Because this company doesn't care about black voices unless those voices belong to paying passengers they can profit from." The story exploded. But Regalis wasn't done fighting. Back at headquarters, Ethan pulled Gregory aside into a soundproof office. "There's something we can try," he said. "I'm listening." "There's an old HR file. Carter had a harassment accusation years ago, settled quietly. The woman's name was erased, but I dug it up. She never went public." Gregory blinked. "You're saying we smear him?" "I'm saying we neutralize the halo. If he's not a saint, people won't follow him." "It muddies the water." "You better be right about this." Ethan didn't respond. He just walked out and made the call. 3 hours later, a story appeared on a fringe media site. Elijah Carter accused of workplace misconduct by former intern. It lacked evidence. It cited an anonymous source, but the story was designed to plant doubt, except this time it didn't go unnoticed. Within minutes, Obsidian's legal team had identified the server, traced the origin of the draft documents, and intercepted the financial transfer that paid for the post. They pushed a full rebuttal, this time with receipts, emails, timestamps, the settlement's origin, and the real reason, a false claim used by a startup competitor to derail a funding round. The woman had recanted in a deposition, and Obsidian had let it go until now. By morning, the smear campaign was a joke, and Regulus was exposed. But the most devastating twist came not from Elijah, not from Obsidian, but from inside Regulus itself. Walter Briggs, the former head of security, had been quietly watching it all unfold. His silence, once loyalty, had turned into something else. He'd kept copies of incident reports, surveillance records, emails. And now, he'd had enough. CNN aired a sit-down interview with Walter that night. What happened with Elijah Carter was not a mistake, he said. It was routine, not just at Dulles, but across our network. The difference is this time they picked the wrong man, and now they're going to feel what that means. And with that, Regulus went from a company under pressure to a company under siege. It was the silence that struck Ethan Vaughn first. Not the frantic conference calls or the flashing alerts in the IT command hub. Not even the angry voices echoing from the executive suite where Gregory Stanton was pacing like a man at the edge of a cliff. It was the eerie, creeping silence right before everything collapsed that made Ethan realize they had lost control. Across the country, from Dallas to D.C., Regulus Airways terminals were drowning in chaos. Ticketing systems were unresponsive. Customer service agents were screaming into disconnected headsets. VIP passengers were being rerouted without warning, and none of their emergency protocols were working. "You've got to see this," whispered a junior systems analyst inside the command center. Ethan moved quickly to her station. Her screen displayed a cascading set of code, a diagnostic log from the infrastructure Obsidian had helped build years ago. But something was different now. In the lower right-hand corner, a small icon had appeared. A raven. "What the hell is that?" Ethan muttered. "It's not part of our system," she said. "It's embedded, deep, hidden in the base layer of the scheduling software. But it's active now." "And what's it doing?" She looked up at him with a face pale from recognition. "It's watching us." Meanwhile, in a hotel suite high above downtown San Francisco, Elijah Carter stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city unfold beneath him. His phone vibrated once. "Speak," he said. Nia Brooks's voice came through calmly. "Phase 3 is complete. Raven protocol confirmed. Full visibility into Regulus infrastructure. All internal communications, financial routing, HR chain of command. We've mapped their crisis plan. They're trying to leak dirt. They're scrambling. And the leak about me? Dead. We buried it with counter-evidence and traced the funding back to a burner account tied to Stanton's private assistant. That's being handled. Good." He turned back toward the massive screen on the wall behind him. On it, the face of Walter Briggs filled the frame from his CNN interview. "There is a culture of targeted enforcement," Walter said evenly. "People of color are consistently flagged for random searches. Complaints vanish. Internal voices are silenced. I've seen it. I've filed the reports. I have the records." As the anchor pressed him for details, Walter opened a worn manila folder on camera. Documents. Memos, logs, time-stamped photos. The story wasn't just credible, it was devastating. Back at Regulus HQ, Stanton was shouting, "Shut it down! All of it! Pull the networks! Disable remote access. Reset admin credentials. Ethan responded evenly. It won't help. Stanton turned to him, eyes bloodshot. What do you mean it won't help? I mean we don't own the pipes anymore. He's already inside. You said we could control this. I said we could contain it, Ethan corrected. You chose to escalate it. You authorized the smear. You ignored every early warning sign. Now Carter's controlling the narrative. And we're walking into every trap he left. A legal advisor entered the room holding a phone. It's the Senate Commerce Committee, she said, voice strained. They've scheduled an emergency hearing. There are questions about Regalis's lobbying records, possible violation of disclosure statutes. They're also requesting all communications related to Carter's detainment. Stanton's face fell. They can't subpoena us without cause. They just did. Ethan stepped back, letting the moment land. Stanton sank into a chair, suddenly looking older, defeated. They're not trying to ruin us, Stanton whispered. They're trying to erase us. No, Ethan said. He's trying to replace you. Across town, a very different meeting was underway. Elijah sat across from a small, diverse group of Regalis minority shareholders and disillusioned board members. The mood was tense but focused. I'm not here to destroy Regalis, Elijah began. I'm here to rebuild it, but not with the same structure, not with the same people. An older board member leaned forward. You're talking about a takeover. I'm talking about a rescue, Elijah replied. This company is weeks, maybe days, from full collapse. Your stock value has plummeted. Your brand is radioactive. Public trust is gone. What I'm offering is a way out, with conditions. What kind of conditions? New leadership. Transparent governance. A commitment to equity, inclusion, and operational integrity. And most importantly, a new name. Regalis dies. Something better rises. Silence hung in the room. Finally, one of the investors spoke. And what makes you think the market will trust you to do that? Elijah looked at him with unwavering eyes. Because I don't need trust. I've already earned credibility. And I have something no one at Regalis does anymore. Proof of vision, proof of integrity, and control of the systems holding your company together. A long pause. Then the board member leaned back and nodded once. He's not here for revenge, she said softly. He's here to make history. Back at Dulles Airport, Paula Dinsmore sat alone at a security desk. Her badge had been revoked. She had just received her official termination letter. No hearing, no arbitration, just a cold statement. Your actions have irreparably damaged our brand. She scrolled through her phone one last time. The video of her confrontation with Elijah now had over 12 million views. Her face had become a meme. Her name, a symbol. She looked up as a passing janitor rolled his cart by. He paused. You the one from the video? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded. He shook his head slowly. Shame. Could have just let the man sit. As he pushed his cart away, Paula sat frozen. It wasn't just a mistake. It was the beginning of an end. And that end had come. Quietly. Completely. And with nothing left to hide behind. The elevator ride to the 38th floor was painfully silent. Gregory Stanton stood with his shoulders rigid, his hands buried in his pockets, his eyes locked on the slowly ticking floor numbers. He could feel the eyes of the board members behind him. Some avoided his gaze. Others didn't bother. The storm had come full circle, and the thunder was echoing down this corridor. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Waiting inside the executive boardroom was Elijah Carter. He stood at the end of the long oak table, dressed not in a designer suit, but a plain gray sweater and dark slacks. No tie, no need for pretense. He looked composed, almost serene, with a presence that seemed to pull the air toward him. Gregory stepped in, followed by Ethan Vaughn and the remaining senior staff. No one sat. Elijah didn't offer a seat. He spoke first. This isn't a negotiation. This is a reckoning. Gregory's lips parted, but nothing came out. You've hollowed out this company, Elijah continued, voice calm but cutting. From the top down, rot disguised as policy. Bigotry branded as procedure. Your entire infrastructure is a house of mirrors held together by NDA glue and backroom deals. Ethan stepped forward. Mr. Carter, with all due respect. No, Elijah said sharply, finally locking eyes with him. You don't get to speak. You don't get respect. Ethan froze. The room held its breath. You launched a smear campaign using fabricated documents, Elijah continued. You commissioned a false story using a victim who doesn't exist. And you thought, what? That I'd run? That I'd get quiet? He took a slow step forward. You should have done your research. I don't run. I don't hide. I build systems that outlive firewalls. I build algorithms that learn your behaviors before you even decide them. I built your system, and I took it back. Martin Glass, pale and trembling near the window, whispered, What do you want? Elijah looked at him, almost pitying. I already have it. You're all just catching up. The door opened. A Regulus legal officer entered with 2 federal agents in tow. Gregory Stanton, one said, holding up a badge. You're under federal investigation for securities fraud, violation of labor laws, and obstruction of justice. You'll need to come with us. Stanton blinked as if the room itself had started spinning. You can't. This is my company. No, Elijah said softly. It was your playground, and now it's evidence. As Stanton was led out, stumbling and wordless, Ethan turned toward Elijah, his composure frayed. You think you're better than us? No, Elijah replied. I think I'm different, and that's why this works. Within the hour, Regulus Airways officially ceased to exist as an independent entity. The board ratified the acquisition by Obsidian Systems, now restructured under a new corporate identity. Meridian Air. A press conference was scheduled for the next morning, but by then the media didn't need permission. News outlets were already breaking the story. Tech visionary Elijah Carter acquires Airline after racial discrimination scandal. Back in a quiet suite overlooking the Potomac, Elijah sat across from his former mentor, Evelyn Cross. The moonlight cut through the glass, washing the room in silver. I never wanted it to end like this, Elijah said. It didn't end, Evelyn replied. You rewrote it. I keep wondering what happens next. What happens after the system is gone? You build a better one. He nodded slowly. You know, she added, most people in your position would have made it personal. It was personal, Elijah said. That's what made it necessary. Meanwhile, in a much smaller office near Dallas, Walter Briggs sat across from 2 federal agents. He handed them a flash drive. That's everything. Internal records, suppressed reports, video logs from internal cams. Dates, times. Names. The lead agent nodded. You've done the right thing. I should have done it sooner, Briggs replied. At the same time, in a modest apartment in Maryland, a young woman named Tiana Bennett watched the press conference on her laptop. She was the former intern whose name had been used without consent in the attempted smear campaign. She smiled as Elijah walked up to the podium on the screen. For years, Elijah said into the mic, travel has divided us. Class, color, cost. Today, that changes. Because the sky doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to all of us. Meridian Air isn't just a name, it's a new direction, where dignity comes standard. Across the country, passengers stranded by Regalis failures were being rebooked under a new system, one that didn't default to suspicion based on skin, that didn't bury complaints, and didn't hide behind protocol. And inside that chaos, inside that rebirth, something quietly remarkable began to grow. Not just an airline, a movement. 3 months after Regalis Airways collapsed, a new logo gleamed under the midday sun at Washington National Airport. Meridian Air, bold. Modern. A name that meant change, meant center, meant direction. And for the passengers slowly filtering through the redesigned terminal, it already felt different. Not because the furniture was newer or the check-in kiosks more efficient, but because the people behind the counters looked like them, spoke like them, greeted them like they mattered. Inside the terminal, cameras swirled around a makeshift stage set up near Gate C8, the same gate where Elijah Carter had once been escorted out without a word. Now he stood at that same spot with a quiet smile and a microphone in hand. No suit. No tie, just a Navy crewneck and presence. 3 months ago, he began, I was told I didn't belong here. Not by a policy, not by a rule book, but by a person who believed she had the right to decide who deserved comfort, who earned access. And like so many people who look like me, I stayed calm. I stayed quiet, but I also took note. The crowd leaned in, silent. I didn't retaliate, he continued. I responded, not with rage, but with strategy, because I knew that fixing a moment doesn't change a system. You don't defeat injustice by shouting at it. You outwork it, you outthink it, and then you rebuild the structure so it can't shut anyone out again. Applause broke out. Soft at first, then building, wave after wave. His voice never rose, but the message struck home. In this building today, you'll see change, not just in logos and uniforms, but in how people are treated. Every employee of Meridian Air has been through extensive inclusion training. Every passenger complaint is recorded, investigated, and followed up. We've installed anonymous reporting systems, equity oversight boards, and a new leadership team committed to transparency. A young black gate agent named Danielle stood to the side, holding back tears. She had been the first in her training cohort. Today, she would be overseeing boarding for the inaugural Meridian flight to San Francisco. And for those wondering, Elijah added, smiling slightly, yes, I will be flying coach today. Because if we do this right, every seat on a Meridian plane should feel like first class. Laughter and cheers followed. Later, Elijah stood quietly by the boarding gate, watching families, students, executives, and elders file onto the plane. No one was stopped. No one was questioned. Not for how they looked, not for how they dressed. It was, finally, just a line of people going somewhere. At the edge of the terminal, someone unexpected appeared. Walter Briggs. No badge, no uniform, just a man who had chosen to do the right thing when it mattered. You showed up, Elijah said, extending a hand. Walter shook it firmly. Couldn't miss it. Still can't believe they offered me director of security. You earned it, Elijah replied. Not because you were perfect, but because you told the truth when you didn't have to. Walter nodded, then glanced around. So, what's next? Elijah looked out the window where the Meridian plane taxied into view, its design sleek and symbolic, a compass with wings. We fly, he said. Across the internet, the story went viral again, but this time not because of scandal. This time it was about possibility. A new brand, a new flight, a new system. Paula Dinsmore's name never resurfaced publicly, but she watched the broadcast from her apartment in suburban Maryland, eyes glassy. She'd taken a job at a small private travel agency. She wasn't angry anymore, just quiet, reflective. She listened to Elijah speak and felt something she hadn't expected. Understanding. Regret, yes, but also the sting of recognition. She had been wrong, and it took losing everything to realize how easy it had been to weaponize power, even in a smile, even in a whisper. Meanwhile, at a high school in Oakland, a group of teens watched the speech on a projector. One of them, a boy named Marcus who'd once worked as an airport intern, grinned when Elijah mentioned him in passing. A young employee saw what happened and didn't stay silent. His courage sparked something much bigger than he imagined. At Obsidian HQ, Nia Brooks sat in her office watching the media coverage on mute. She smiled, a rare moment of stillness for the woman who had coordinated a digital war without firing a single line of illegal code. Justice didn't have to be loud to be irreversible. Back on the plane, Elijah found his seat, 17A. Window coach. The flight attendant passed by, then stopped mid-step. "Mr. Carter?" He looked up. "It's an honor to have you with us today," she said. He nodded. "The honor's mine." As the aircraft ascended into the clouds, the passengers stared out at the skyline, unaware that they were part of something historic. Not because of who built it, but because of who it included. And Elijah leaned back, eyes closed, the hum of progress all around him. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is quietly take your seat and change the system from within. If this story moved you, if you believe in justice, in fairness, in rebuilding the broken, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. Let others know, true change isn't just possible, it's already in motion.